Hello. All right, clearing up my screen, just making sure I've got things going on the way we need them to be. Okay. All right, so this is a live Q&A for dietetic students working on their application. This is right before the Fall Match 2020, so if you've got questions for that, hi Sarah, then I'm happy to answer anything you've got, or if you are getting a head start on your Spring 2021 match application and have questions as you're just getting started or in the middle of your app, let's hear it. I will share all the DI director knowledge and perspective that I possibly can so that you feel you've got the information you need to work on your application and be really confident and know that it will stand out when you hit submit. So I do have some questions that were submitted earlier, but if you've got questions, if you're on the live, go ahead and type them into that little question box or type them into the comment box, although I feel like the comment box is harder for the moderator if they're also the speaker to actually go through. So hopefully I will be able to catch any questions that are typed in along the way. So just to start things off, I am going to go, I've got some questions that I saved on that were submitted otherwise or before this. I've got them on my iPad. So the first question, I love this, must be a fall match person, was, are directors bugged when they get questions this close to the deadline? So like I said, we're about a week out from fall 2020 deadline. Are directors bugged if you are emailing them right now? And I mean, I can't tell you how every single director feels about it, but when I was a director, no, I was not bugged when people were emailing me a week, out from the deadline, because to me that meant they were working really hard to make sure that their application was as strong as it could be and that they had the information they needed. And as I'm thinking about looking at their application, I want them to feel good about it and I want it to be a good application. Looking at applications that have really obvious shortcomings is not fun for a director. So again, I can't speak for every director out there, but I think globally they would rather get your questions than not get your questions. So if you do have something that you really need help figuring out with on your application before you can hit that submit button, something that's really, interfering with your really high level of confidence that you want, go ahead and submit that question to the director and hopefully they will get back to you as needed. So we've got a few other people on. If you have questions, go ahead and throw them in the comment box, or the little question icon would be better because then I can see them. Nope, not what I wanted to do. And nope. Okay, sorry. Still getting used to all of the stuff on Instagram Live. I haven't done very many of these. Okay, another question that was submitted before from someone in my stories was, can I add a professional mentorship to Dicus? And I didn't have a chance to follow up with this question to make sure, or this person to make sure I'm understanding this question, but I'm going to consider it a couple of different ways that it could have been done. So can I add a professional mentorship to Dicus? If you were being mentored by someone, that's one way I am reading this. If you are being mentored by someone, then I think you could maybe list it under extracurricular activities to indicate, this is why I think it's a positive thing. It's indicating that you either sought out professional mentoring or, looked for someone who could help you with this stage of your education as you're moving on in your career to become a dietitian, and it showed that you were open to receiving feedback from someone. It showed that you were open to, receiving comments, and sometimes it's really hard to receive that sort of information from someone, to know that they have it in your best interest, but it's really hard to be told from someone like, this is something you need to work on. So I think you could list it as an extracurricular activity if you were receiving mentoring. If it included something like shadowing, if you were shadowing a dietitian, as they were mentoring you, then you could put it in the experience section of Dicus and explain what you did as you were being shadowed. You could also explain the mentoring, but if it's just mentoring, if it's just this doesn't even say it was a dietitian, I'm assuming. I'm making some assumptions here. If it's just the dietitian is helping you, be successful at this stage, then I would not put it in the experience section because there weren't roles and responsibilities that you had for that. And then a third way this could be looked at is if you were offering mentorship to someone in some capacity. And that, I would definitely include that. If you were offering the mentorship, I could see it being either, again, extracurricular, or you could maybe, spin it as a volunteer opportunity if you were helping someone with their whatever capacity you were helping them in. There's a lot of different ways to look at that. So hopefully this person is able to watch the live and garner some useful information from those possible scenarios. So hi, I'm going to wave to everyone that just joined. Thank you so much for being on here. Any questions from you guys coming up or that are on the call? I have a list of I pushed the share an image button and I don't want to share an image, but they're still at the bottom of my screen and I got rid of them. I was like, that's distracting to me. Okay, I'm just going to keep going from the questions that were submitted beforehand. So this question, I actually spoke with someone that I am working with on their application. I helped them with this earlier this week. And the question is, how can I remind my references that they agreed to help me and I need them to submit their letter because the application deadline is a week away? First of all, I will give you a reminder that you can submit your application even if your references have not yet filled out their part. As long as you have put their information in there so the Dicus can contact them, you can hit submit without their letter actually being attached to your application. But if you want to avoid the anxiety of going through that, because that can be a little anxious, then you certainly can send them a reminder. Let them know. You can just word it this way. Hey, just reaching out to remind you that you agreed to submit a letter of recommendation for me for my Dicus application. The deadline is next Friday, September 25th. And so I'm just sending you this reminder so you can put that, back on your to-do list and help me out with that. Let me know if you have any questions. And then they might say, oh yeah, I got the email from Dicus. Thanks for reminding me. I didn't realize that much time had passed. I believe if you have already entered the reference's name into Dicus, there might be an option, if they have not submitted their stuff yet, there might be an option for you to resend the invitation so that, because Dicus is going to send them a link, they click on the link and it takes them to this form that they fill out, they evaluate you on a couple of things, and then they can input their recommendation letter. So they might be like, oh yeah, I got that link, but it's buried in my inbox, can you resend it to me? So you might be able to, in Dicus, hit a resend or reinvite link to them so they get that to the top of their inbox. So, but yes, take charge of your application. You can tell your references that the deadline is coming up. Okay. It just says PS advice, so I'm assuming personal statement advice. This was submitted in my stories. So here's a good piece of personal statement advice. Make sure that you mention the program name in your personal statement. There are so many times that I read a personal statement that came across Dicus into my program and it didn't once mention the name of my program. They answered all the questions. My program had 2 questions that we added to the Dicus questions, and they even answered those, program specific questions, but never once did they say the name of my program. Now, it's not a requirement. It's not black and white in the Dicus questions that you should do that, but here is what always made me wonder as I read those personal statements. I thought, did they mean to apply to this program? Or did they somehow stumble upon us and they clicked on us last minute? Do they know that they sent their personal statement to this program because they didn't mention us anywhere? They didn't mention another program. Certainly don't mention the wrong program in the personal statement. But let the program know that you consciously and intentionally submitted your application to them And one way to do that is by putting their name in your personal statement. Okay, I keep checking for questions and I'm not seeing any come in. Okay, I'll keep going from this list. Where am I? All right, can you provide an example for how to describe an involvement in Dicus? Okay, Sarah, I'm gonna get to your question. I just saw, I had to say that so I'd remember to look back at it. Let me answer this question first. Okay, provide an example for how to describe an involvement in Dicus. So this one I had to look up and just make sure I was referring to the right section in Dicus, and it is, I'm assuming this person is referring to in the professional, so in the experiences section, where you put your awards, work, volunteer, all of that, there is an option you can select for if you add an entry. It's called professional conferences, symposiums, and workshops. And then in the space of that entry, you would, like what it asks for is involvement, activity, or presentation while at the conference. So I think this person is asking, what would you actually type into that box? So I'm thinking stuff you would put in that section are like if you went to, you know, your local A&D affiliate conference. I was looking at an application today, someone who went to a breastfeeding conference. Here, I live in Utah, and here the Dairy Council puts on what's called the Dairy Council Breakfast once a year, and it's like a 2-hour sponsored breakfast where you go and there's someone that lectures on a research topic that is very popular involving dairy and that sort of thing. So those are the sorts of events you could put in there. And then what you would put in involvement is, you know, this is what I did. This is the title of the lecture I attended, or you know, if it's like a 2-day conference, these are the sessions that I went to, this is the information that was covered. Or I know, you know, lots of times you can volunteer for things like that. So if you attended the conference and you were part of the sponsor committee and you helped find sponsors for the conference, or you were part of the registration committee and you were there, you know, as attendees were walking in and picked up their name badges, you know, you can indicate I attended the conference, I was also participating in this way. So those are some of the things you could put if you have an entry like that. All right, Sarah's question. It was too long for the question box. I didn't know it had a length. Okay. I'm a career changer and have 10 years of experience in human resources, but little dietetics experience. Any tips on what to highlight? Okay, yes, you want to highlight any skills that you are going to transfer into dietetics. So I have no idea exactly what you did in human resources, but I'm going to give you an example. This is someone who was actually in my class. She was a career changer like you. She had been a flight attendant. I don't know which airline, but she was a flight attendant for several years, like 15 years before she decided to change into dietetics. And she, this is someone in my program, and I worked with her later on, and that's how I figured out this is how she could spin it to be dietetics unrelated. But she had worked her way up from being just your general run-of-the-mill flight attendant to basically helping run almost all the trainings for other flight attendants within the airline that she was with. So was she, I mean, if you think about it, like dietetics related, they were giving on-flight meals. I don't know, is that dietetics related? That's neither here nor there, but what she was able to focus on was I trained people, I helped manage, the teams, I helped if she had been involved in hiring or firing, but she helped with all the training and all of that. So those are things that dietitians do. Those are, in her case, they were management skills, they were leadership skills that she used and maybe first gained in flight attending. Is that what that occupation is called, in flight attending? And then brought that over to dietetics. So in human resources, again, no idea what you've done, but if you've worked at all with client accounts or team leadership or creating training materials, things like that, you can highlight those skills if you've been, think of the things that just belong in the workplace. Can you do reports on time that are sufficient and meet requirements for whatever you're filling them out for, time management, recruiting, I don't know, things like that. So focus on the skills that you learned in that field, but you can also apply to and will most likely use in the dietetics field, even if that doesn't mean you ever made a meal plan as a human resources person, or you ever, calculated the GFR as a human resources person. There are things you did there that you'll bring to dietetics. Okay, when attending virtual open houses, what questions do you recommend to ask directors of those programs? Also, how far back would it be okay to put an experience down in the application? All right, so question 1, going to a virtual open house. Yes, do that, because that's how you can get information about the program. Asking questions is a really great way to start establishing any sort of connection with the program and with the director. Do not ask a question that is on the website or that they, blatantly put on one of their slides in their virtual open house or something like that. So it can be helpful if you've looked a little bit beforehand at what is on their website, maybe form some questions from that, and hopefully all your questions are answered during the open house. But just kind of take it one step further from whatever information you have and ask those types of questions. It helps show the director that you really are interested, you're invested in, figuring out if this is a good fit for you and really determining what will make your application stand out and what your experience would be like in that program if you were to match. So what types of questions do you recommend asking? Let me give some examples. I worked for a distance internship, and so students who applied to our program were required to find preceptors. So sometimes they would ask questions, along those lines. How do I find a preceptor? Who can I ask? Where do I get these resources? Things like that. Other questions that you might ask. You've probably heard some of these questions before, but they're good questions. They're out there because they're around, because they're commonly asked, because it doesn't hurt to ask these questions. Things like, what do you look for in interns to see if they'll be successful in your program? If it's not stated clearly on the website, how long is this rotation? Is that in days or weeks or hours? Some people just put, you have to do, 400 hours of community. Is that 40 hours a week? Is that 10 hours a week? What does that look like? I'm blanking on questions. I feel really bad. The main thing is, don't ask questions that are answered elsewhere. Always take it one step beyond. You can ask them stuff about what it's like to be in their program, what's a day in the life of an intern in your program, how much time can we spend, plan to spend on homework, how much time do we plan on spending commuting. All of those things are going to vary by program, and probably by obviously your own situation. But if you can think of this is in my head what it looks like when I'm going to be part of this internship, I want to make sure that's correct. Things that you maybe need to keep in mind. I have a family, or I know I need to work part-time, or I have a vacation coming up. You can ask these really logistical questions, like, what happens if I get sick and I can't go to rotations that day? How flexible is my schedule? Or, what happens if a preceptor falls through, whether it's a preceptor I found or a preceptor that the program arranged for me? What happens then? I don't know. Now I'm just spouting off random questions. Let me know if you need other examples. The other part of your question, how far back would it be okay to put an experience down in the application? For part of that, I would see if the program you're applying to has a length of time that they will look back. So the program I looked at or worked at, we only looked at the last 10 years. I would probably not put anything from high school unless it's really, really applicable somehow to, if it was something a company you worked at in high school and you've worked your way up to whatever position you are in now. I don't think that necessarily belongs on your application if it's not specifically dietetics related. But I'm also now going to say, let's see, how have I phrased this before? Anything that you do not put on your application, you are deciding for the program that it does not count. Whereas if you put it on the application, you are letting the program decide, I've got, I have 150 hours in this one place from 7 years ago. I don't know if the program's going to count that or not. If you don't put it on on your application, it doesn't count because the program doesn't know about it. If you do put it on your application, then the program can read about it and they can say, that's cool, but I don't really care. I'm not counting those 150 hours. Or they might say, that's cool and I care halfway, so I'm going to count 50% of the hours. I don't know. Every program is going to look at their work volunteer a little differently. In my program, there were times where we would count maybe a percentage of the hours. But again, if you leave it off the application, it doesn't count, even if it would have counted if you put it on. So hopefully that is a weird kind of double-sided rule of thumb that I just gave you. Let me know if you need clarification. Okay, that's all the comments I see there, so I'm going to go to another one that was sent in. This is also for... Sorry, this next one would go in that same awards membership. It's like the catch-all section of Dicus. So much goes in there. It's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. I would have organized it differently. That's what I meant to say. Okay, if I am a member of a DPG, which is Dietetic Practice Group, and an MIG, which I believe is a member interest group, do I list them separately under memberships? Okay, so in that section of Dicus, you can list any organizations that you're a member of. So if you're a student member of A&D, definitely list that. These DPGs and the MIGs are like sub-levels under A&D, so I would list them not as separate entries, like not an entry for A&D plus an entry for the DPG plus another entry for the MIG. I would do one entry for A&D, and then in that box section where it's like, tell us more about your involvement. This would be a great involvement thing. I'm a member of A&D, and I'm also a member of these DPGs and MIGs that are part of A&D. I think that would make the best sense, since they're all, A&D is an umbrella and the other stuff is under there. Okay, what if my resume is longer than 1 page? Very common question. This is one of those things, you guys, I feel for you so much. I really, really do. Spoiler alert, not spoiler alert, I don't know. I actually went through a coordinated program, so I didn't learn really about Dicus and this whole situation until I started working for the Dietetic Internship that I eventually became director of. And sorry, this is a little tangent. I just feel like some of the questions that come up are just the result of the complexities that go into this application, and obviously the anxieties of the match rate and all of that. But I just feel bad that some of these questions come up and that they become this major source of anxiety when, from the director's side, some of these questions are like, it doesn't really matter. And I know you guys can't know that when you have the questions and you want your application to be perfect. So just understand that I feel so much for the anxieties that come up, and I hope that with this information coming out, it can ease some of the anxieties. Okay, what if my resume is longer than 1 page? That's okay. There is no rule that says you will not match if your resume is longer than 1 page. I saw this comes up in one of the Facebook groups I'm in with students, like every month. And, students are all over the place, like, oh, I made mine only 1 page, and then someone else is like, I matched my, first choice and my resume was 3 pages long. Here's what directors are probably most likely looking for when they look at your resume. Does this fit in well with everything else we looked at on your application? Meaning, you put all these things in work volunteer and you've mentioned these things in your personal statement. Does this resume look like it also belongs to the person who wrote this application? Is it nicely organized? Did you put thought into it? And even if it's more than 1 page, does it make sense that it's more than 1 page? If it's 1 page and 3 lines, no, that's poor organization. You can edit 3 lines and make that 1 page. Is it a full 2 pages because you've got tons of experience and you're explaining it well? Great. Is it 2 pages because you have 1-inch margins and 3 enter breaks between entries? Because that's just fluffing up your resume for no reason. So yes, your resume can be longer than 1 page, but if it is, make sure that it makes sense for whatever space it is taking up, and that it fits in as part of the whole of your application. Sorry, I can only talk with one hand, and that might look weird. All right. Okay, this kind of goes in with the other stuff I've talked about with the professional memberships and symposiums and conferences. What is considered a professional conference, symposium, workshop? So like I said before, an A&D affiliate meeting, if you've attended or participated in any of those. I mentioned the breastfeeding conference, the Dairy Council breakfast that I have here in Utah. If you've participated in any of those sorts of events on campus or within the community, it doesn't have to, be something that dietitians put together. If you don't want, if you've attended other things than that have shown that you are involved in stuff that's going on, you're aware, these conferences and things happen to make sure people are up to date and aware of what's going on. It's part of continuing education for dietitians, which we're required to keep up with so that we can demonstrate that, we are current with our credentials, with the evidence-based practice that we use with our clients, with our patients, and in those settings. That's the whole point of that's why these things exist. So if you're showing that you have attended them as a student, no problem if you have not, because there's a million reasons why you would or would not attend one. But if you have been able to attend them, then it shows, you've been involved, you've been interested, you've been participating, you've been learning. So, all of those things you can definitely include on your application. Okay, I've only got 2 questions left that were submitted prior. So if you've got your own questions, pop them into the comment box or the question box. Okay, this question is a little bit ahead of where anyone is right now, but good to think about, and I do have a resource for it. So it was, how does the match work when I rank my programs? So ranking programs is after you submit to Dicus. So you submit to Dicus, and then your application is being read by directors, and you've also registered on D&D Digital. So the match happens in D&D Digital, and within that program, within D&D Digital, that's where you've listed all the programs that you're applying to, and you can rearrange your choice order, and that's the ranking of the programs. The algorithm is going to work hardest for the way students have ranked their programs, and there is a deadline. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but there is a deadline where it's you have to have your final program ranking in by this deadline. So it's a couple of weeks after the Dicus deadline. So work on Dicus, get that all figured out, and then you'll be in D&D Digital, and you can rearrange the programs that you've applied to. If you're well, I thought Program Apple was my #1 choice, but then I had an interview at Program Zucchini, and I'm super excited for them, and I like them better than Apple now, so you would rearrange them. The match works by taking all of that into consideration, because applicants have matched programs, and then programs, after they look at all their applications that they received, they will rank all the applicants. It's a massive numbers game. But I do have a resource about this. I made a video showing how the algorithm works, how spots get filled up, how all of the things are taken into consideration. So when I make this an IGTV, I will be able to put a link in there. So I will link to that video that shows the match. So when you get to the point of considering ranking your programs, you can see how it works. Okay. Oh, this is just a note for me. I actually don't have another question that was submitted before. So any questions from you guys? Who is getting ready for the fall match? So your deadline is coming up super fast. Give me a thumbs up or something in the comments. I'm trying not to sneeze. Is no one in the fall match, or is no one paying attention? How many programs do you recommend we apply to? Oh, there's someone in the fall match. Awesome, Sarah. Okay. How many programs do you recommend we apply to? There is no magic number. I did a survey recently where I asked several questions about students' application experience. And one of the questions was, if you have already applied, whether you know, how many are you planning to apply to in the future? How many did you apply if they had already gone through a match? And there are students that applied to as many as 6 programs. They did match. There are students that apply to 1 program. They do match. I don't think there probably is, if we broke out all the numbers. I am not a numbersy person. I'm numbersy enough to be a dietitian, but I'm not like, let's do stats right now. I'm not that sort of person. So I'm sure there's like supposedly magic number of the students who applied to this were most likely to match. I don't know what that number is. I do not think it's wise to just randomly add programs to your list to try to increase your chances of matching, because I don't know if that actually does increase your chances of matching. It means you're going to pay more in application fees, and you're going to have to write extra numbers of personal statements, and just be aware of all that extra program nuances in their own application processes. So I think I'm not really answering your question, because I honestly don't know if there is an answer. There are people who apply to 1 and match. There are people that apply to 5 and don't match. So I don't think the number is the most important part. I think the application is the most important part, and making sure, A, you don't want to apply to a program that you really are not interested in. Because if you match to that program and you're like, I don't want to be part of this program, and you say yes, then you're in a program that you don't want to be a part of. And if you match that program and you say no, then you're out of the match until the next match. If you match to a program and you say no, you don't get to apply in the second round. So just keep that in mind. So don't ever apply to a program that you don't want to be a part of. Someone did say, I've heard guidance to apply to 100 spots. So that's taking out the number of programs entirely. That's saying, okay, I'm applying to one program that's got, 12 spots, another program that has 75 spots, and, pick one more program that has 10 or less spots, and you're about there. That is one thing to be aware of, or to obviously have as part of your consideration, that you're vying for one of 100 spots somewhere within those programs. If you're going, whether you're going that way or you're going with number of programs, I think a good piece of information to get from those programs is how many applications are they getting for all of those programs. Because a program that has 12 spots and gets 100 applications is going to have a 12% match rate within their individual program. That's pretty low. And if you apply to a program that has 70 spots and they also get 100 applications, they have a 70% match rate within their individual program. So that's something to be aware of, is not only how many spots you're going for, but how many other people are going for those same spots. So there's no magic number, but there's some information to get to add to your consideration, I guess. Sorry. It'd be nice if I could just say apply to 3 and you'll be great. You'll be grand, but I can't say that. So it's important to think about, not only will this be a good fit for me, if you think about like logistical things, is this the location that will work for me? Is this a length of time that will work for me? Is this a tuition amount that will work for me? But also, as you interact with programs, that's a really big thing to be aware of. Do I like these faculty members? Do I like the director? When I sent them questions, did they respond in 2 days or did it take 3 weeks? And I'm not going to say what is the deciding factor for you, but that's something to keep in mind. If I can imagine that I will be treated in this program, if I were an intern, the same way I was treated while I was just a potential applicant, Is that going to give me the type of experience I want? That sort of thing. Any other questions before I just continue rambling on about numbers and things? Again, I'm not a numbers person. I probably shouldn't talk numbers. Any questions about, I don't know, what are you putting the finishing touches on, or what? And I can just throw a personal statement out there. I feel like that's always what someone has some major questions about, and I only gave one piece of advice about it so far. So any questions about the personal statement now that you know to put the program name in there? No personal statement questions. That's good. Let's see what other notes I have here. Just a few things. Like I said, you can submit your application before references submit their part. You can also submit your application before your transcripts have been officially connected to it. As long as you have put in the transcript request through your school and you've put into Dicus, you know, these are all the places I'm getting transcripts from, then they will just attach it to your application when they come in, even if it's after you've hit submit and even if it's after the deadline. As a director, I saw on my end, you know, the deadline would pass and I'd go into Dicus and see which applications had come to my program. And there's two sections on the director side. There's one that says complete, which means this application has everything already. And then there was an incomplete, which meant the student did everything on their part. So here's their application. We're still waiting on pieces from other folks. So we're waiting on their transcript or we're waiting on a reference. And then when the transcript was attached, it would be bumped into the complete side. So you don't need to wait for that. Although I can understand if you hopefully ordered everything in time, then you can see that they get attached so you don't have that added anxiety of having to wait for it. I know we already talked about some of the other things I had written down about like career changes and things like that. So if no one else has any other questions, then that might just wrap up this live Q&A. But thank you all for coming. I saw some comments that you got some information that was useful for you. So that is always my goal. Honestly, like I said, I did this survey, and even within just a few responses, I was just like, this process has some issues, and you guys are like, oh, tell me about it, like I didn't know. I know you guys know, and I am knowing even more that you are going through this whole situation. So my goal as a DI application guide is really to eliminate the gaps that exist that shouldn't, and provide this information so it's accessible and affordable and absolutely available, because the less hiccups and obstacles there are in this process, I think the better it is for everyone. So that is what I'm here for. Thank you all for coming and asking the questions that you had. I will save this as an IGTV if you need to catch the whole thing, if you came in part way, so you can watch it all. And have a great night, everyone.